What's happening, everybody? Happy Friday. Happy Christmas Eve if you celebrate. And most importantly, since you're listening to this, I'm assuming you are celebrating Happy Packers Eve. We have Packers Browns tomorrow. We have a lot to get to. I do want to get to my defensive grades from this past week against the Ravens, so more on that in just a moment. But we did have some injury updates. We'll start with the Packers. Ty Summers, Malik Taylor, Billy Turner, David Bakhtiari, all out this week, so none of those players will play. Ty Summers, Malik Taylor certainly could affect the special teams. Both of them are core special teams players. I know the cynic in you is already saying, well, it's not like the special teams is that good already, which of course you are correct. But every player down certainly makes it that newer players are in, maybe less experienced players are in, and that certainly could affect the Packers on special teams this Saturday. Dominique Daphne is questionable for this game. And then at least one piece of good news, EQ, who has also become a core special teams player, and also a pretty darn good wide receiver, he is good to go for the game. And the biggest news, the most important news, is about Kenny Clark. Now, not cleared officially as of yet, still going through protocols. However, he was back at practice. So what does that mean? He's back at practice, but he hasn't cleared COVID protocols. So usually what that means is there's additional testing. Rogers talked about this on the McAfee show a while back, what he would need to do in order to play when he came back from his COVID bout. But basically what it means is that he can return to practice and things like that, but he still has to pass some like conditioning stuff and things like that. So he is no longer contagious, which is why he's at practice. However, he will need to get officially cleared. Usually that's a formality. Hopefully that's the case with Kenny and he's able to go on Saturday. But it certainly seems to be trending in the right direction for Kenny Clark to play on Saturday against the Browns, which would be massive, huge news, both literally and figuratively, because Kenny Clark is a big man that clogs up the middle of that defense and would be very important against the Browns on Saturday. All right, as far as the Browns go, John Johnson is going to be out this week. That is a big loss for their secondary. Of course, they are missing players all over the place. J.C. Treader is now out with COVID, so that is a massive loss again for their offensive line, which is already missing a ton of players. And then the other, big ones along the Browns defensive line, Myles Garrett and Malik Jackson, both listed as questionable. So, man, if Myles Garrett can't go, like he's their last bastion of hope right now. Now we'll see if Baker or some of these other players are still able to make it back before the game. As of right now, Baker still has not. But if Myles Garrett can't go, man, like it's one thing after the other for the Browns, and that would be a crippling blow to the Browns defense as they try to stop this high-powered Packers offense. All right, I think those are all the updates that have to go from an injury standpoint. We'll get to game preview a little bit more tomorrow, but I want to go through my defensive grades because I haven't had the opportunity to get to them yet, and I want to run through them really quickly here. So my top 3 graded players this week: Eric Stokes, Rasul Douglas, Chandon Sullivan, all corners. And if you think about it, right, wide receivers in this game for the Ravens didn't do a whole heck of a lot. Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman, Duvernay had a nice reception, but overall, receivers didn't do a lot of the heavy lifting, right? It was Mark Andrews, it was Huntley on the ground, there's a little bit of the running backs, but for the most part, the corners did a good job. Now, Douglas and Sullivan were just slightly over neutral grades, nothing huge for either of them. Eric Stokes was a really nice grade in this game, though. I thought it was one of his best games of the season. Joe Barry wanted to, I guess, go on and on about him and say, I think he said something to the extent of like, as much time as you'll give me to brag on Eric Stokes, I'll brag on him. Like, he was effusive in his praise for Stokes, and rightfully so. I wrote about this in my grades this week for Packer Report. Make sure to check out the full grades over on PackerReport.com today. But I wrote about this in more detail and basically saying, you go back and you watch Eric Stokes tape, there's zero question of the upside, right? 4.2 40 speed. He's big, 6 foot tall, SEC pedigree. Like, it's not difficult to say, okay, the ceiling is pretty darn high for Eric Stokes. But you watch him a bit longer and you also quickly realize gets off balance quite a bit. His technique needs a lot of work. Nuanced route runners gave him some trouble in college. And you knew he was going to take some refinement as he's making his transition from college to the NFL. Nowhere in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that he made that transition so quickly and so smoothly. He came in rookie minicamp, but I think it was the first rookie minicamp practice. Bailey Gaither just smokes him down the left sideline, which is not what you want to see. You're undrafted rookie receiver, besting your first round pick corner. he started off struggling in OTAs and mini camps. Remember in training camp, the big story was like, Rodgers and Adams picking on Eric Stokes. Yeah, well, it's Rodgers and Adams, so you can have some accident forgiveness there, but it wasn't just Rodgers and Adams. He was having trouble with a lot of the Packers wide receivers. And for anyone that was there, you started to pick up on, okay, this isn't going so great. Some of those concerns that you had with the balance and the technique and just his overall footwork, like some of those things you were concerned about even going into like third week of training camp. And then for whatever reason, something clicked and he started to gain more confidence. All those individual drills that Jerry Gray was in technique work that Jerry Gray was trying to instill in Stokes all of a sudden started carrying over to team drills and then into games. And all of a sudden, before you knew it, he was called upon as a starter on this defense and he was ready. And it's not to say that it's been perfect. It's not to say that he hasn't had the very usual and common rookie ups and downs for a corner. He certainly has. But man, some of the high-end skills that he displays, even from a technique standpoint already, is so exciting. And he looks ready to be a starting cornerback right now. He looks like he's going to have the potential to be a number one corner for a team. Maybe not a team that has Jair Alexander because that spot's sort of spoken for. But man, the thought of Stokes at that level with Jair Alexander as your two outside corners is just tantalizing to think about. And the sky's the limit. And frankly, this past week and a couple other games this year, man, Eric Stokes at times flashes like a young number 23 as well. I know Jair is still young, but like rookie number 23, there's some eerie similarities there at time. I know they're not like a perfect match from a size and height and speed and strength ratio, but man, you just watch some of their speed and technique and how they float and how they can get to the where they need to go on the field. Some eerie similarities at times. So Stokes number 1, Douglas 2, Chandon Sullivan number 3. Again, only Eric Stokes really grading out really well in this game for the defense. On the flip side, Darnell Savage had one of my lowest grades of the season at safety this week. Of course, his coverage on Mark Andrews also had a couple of suspect plays later in the game. Overall, certainly not Savage's best performance. I did like that he bounced back in the second half. I love that he made the game-sealing play to bat away that pass. I'm not sure that would have been completed anyway. Stokes had good coverage. Didn't look like it was the greatest throw. But nonetheless, Savage makes a great play on the ball, trusts his instincts, bats the ball away, and that sealed the game. So I do love that Stokes battled back in this, that Savage battled back in this game, but he really struggled throughout almost the majority of this game up until the end. Rashawn Gary was the other one that was disappointing as well. Go back to the Bears game. You saw him get out of his rush lanes quite a bit. He didn't have the best attack against Justin Fields, allowed him to get up the field. You were hoping that he was going to learn from that, but unfortunately that wasn't the case at all. Rashawn Gary is at his best when he is power rushing and going through the offensive tackle in front of him. He got a gift in the fact that the starting tackle on his side was injured early in the game, and in comes David Sharp, who has been a very inconsistent and poor tackle in his career so far. Rashawn Gary couldn't really do anything against him. He kept trying to go around him and around him and around him, and he kept consistently getting behind the quarterback. Well, Tyler Huntley, that's the last thing you want to do. You want to make him bounce. If he's going to bounce to the outside, you want to have contain. You want to funnel him back inside, keep him in the pocket. Rashawn kept going either past the quarterback or like trying to get back inside and allowing rush lanes to the outside. It's a frustrating game for Gary. He had a couple nice plays early, but overall, you would have loved to seen him learn from that Bears game in Justin Fields, and you would have loved to see him just kind of evolve as the game went on to say, all right, I'm going to start going through David Sharp instead of keep trying to go around him or spin. Like, it's just a weird, odd game. And I think Gary at times, two of the traits that serve him so well are his, nonstop motor and just his impassioned desire to get to the quarterback. Like, he's a passionate football player and you can tell. But you could almost see him just getting tunnel vision where he's like, got to get to the quarterback, got to get to the quarterback, got to get to the quarterback. Well, no, you want to keep him in the pocket and you want to pressure that offensive tackle, push him back, collapse that pocket. And when he tries to escape, hedge out, don't allow that running lane. So I think definitely a learning experience from Gary, and hopefully these past 2 weeks allow for him to even grow as a player even more, because that's sometimes the difference between a really good player and a great player is the ability to recognize that it's not always about the stats. It's not always about just getting to the quarterback. It's about making the best football play possible. And I thought at times Rashawn Gary didn't do that this past week. Number 3, very similarly, Tipa Naliai. I thought he also got behind the quarterback or would spin inside and allow an alley to the outside. Edge rushers just needed to really keep their lanes, contain, and make sure that Huntley did not get out. They did not do that. It was a huge reason why Green Bay struggled to play defense and just put so many of the other defenders in tough situations because it just gave Huntley so much more time and running space. It was just not a great job by the edge rushers to keep him contained and inside the pocket. You look at that defense as a whole, the fact that they didn't really make any plays, right? No interceptions, no fumble recoveries, 1 sack, which was on a Huntley, kind of scramble to buy time where Devondre Campbell kind of cleaned it up at the end. No players really stepping up. Yes, Stokes had a real good game, but outside of that, nobody really else. Gary and Savage struggled too, the guys that you need to step up if you're not going to have a Z and a Clark and a Jair, and they had rough games. They lost contain, and that's all of a sudden why you have Tyler Huntley putting up 30 points and never really looking flustered and just being in rhythm all game long. All those things kind of go together as to why Green Bay wasn't able to get off the field and why the Ravens were able to have good point production in that game. Do I think they're going to learn from it? Yes. Do I think they'll be better moving forward? Yes. But it was certainly a learning game for the Packers defense. They put up 30. They still got the win, and you always want to learn those lessons in a win rather than in a loss. That is going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, for those of you who are celebrating, I hope you have a very Merry Christmas Eve. I will be back here tomorrow prior to the Packers-Browns game, and then after as well, which will launch on the 26th. So it's Packers game day tomorrow. It is Packers-Browns. It still feels weird on Saturday, Christmas Day, but it's really happening at Lambeau Field. Should be amazing. So I'll be right back here tomorrow to kick things off. Until next time, though, and as always, go Pack Go.